When Kelly packed her bag that night, her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of being accused of something she never did. Her father's words echoed through the hallway. "Apologize or leave this house." And as the door closed behind her, Kelly whispered through her tears, "One day, the truth will walk into this house, and it won't knock." Kelly's heart froze the moment she saw her mother's necklace lying in her drawer, broken into pieces. She hadn't touched it. She hadn't even been near it. But her sister, Nerra, ran into the room, tears streaming down her face, screaming that Kelly had stolen it and broken it because she was jealous. Kelly tried to explain, to tell them the truth, but no one listened. Their father, Packy, stood in the doorway, his face tight and unforgiving. He didn't ask how it had happened. He didn't even look at the pieces carefully. His voice was sharp as he said, "Apologize or leave this house." Kelly's hands shook, not from fear of leaving, but from the shock of being accused of something she didn't do. She looked at her mother, hoping for a word, a sign that she believed her. But her mother only sat there, silent, watching as the world she had known collapsed. That silence hurt more than the accusation itself. Kelly shook her head, refusing to bow to a lie she hadn't committed. Packy's jaw tightened, and he repeated, "Apologize or leave." Kelly took a deep breath, her eyes stinging, and slowly packed her bag. Every step toward the door felt heavier than the last, as if the walls of her home were pushing her out, condemning her for something she had never done. Nerra's sobs filled the room, echoing with false guilt, while Kelly's heart beat with quiet fury. The rain had begun outside, tapping against the windows like the rhythm of her anger. She stepped into the night, carrying only a small bag, her dignity, and a silent promise that the truth would not stay hidden forever. Every tear she shed was not for the broken necklace, but for the trust that had shattered with it. That night, Kelly learned a painful lesson. Sometimes the people you love most can betray you, and sometimes, their silence hurts even more than their accusations. But in that hurt, a spark of determination was born. She whispered into the dark, "I will return, and when I do, the truth will have no choice but to show itself." And with that, she walked away from the house she had called home, carrying the weight of a lie that would soon become the fire that lit her comeback. Kelly stepped out into the cold night, her backpack slung over one shoulder, feeling the rain soak through her clothes. Every drop seemed to echo the emptiness she felt inside. The streets were quiet, except for the sound of water splashing beneath her feet. She wandered for hours, unsure where to go, afraid to return home to the people who had accused her. Finally, she sank onto the bench of an old, dimly lit bus stop, shivering and exhausted. She hugged her knees and stared at the puddles forming around her, feeling completely alone. Just as she was about to give up hope, a soft voice broke through the rain. "Child, are you okay?" Kelly looked up and saw a woman standing with an umbrella, her face kind and warm. She introduced herself as Mrs. Dina, a retired teacher who lived nearby. She didn't ask why Kelly was out in the rain or demand to know what had happened. She simply offered her a warm cup of tea and said, "Sometimes, the truth needs time to grow teeth." Those words sank deep into Kelly's heart. For the first time that night, she felt a tiny spark of hope. Mrs. Dina offered Kelly a room to stay in. It was small and simple, but it was safe. Over the next few days, Kelly rested, letting her mind clear and her anger settle. She watched the city from Dina's small balcony, realizing that leaving home didn't mean the end of her life. It could be the beginning of something new. She remembered all the skills she had learned quietly over the years. Drawing, designing, organizing. Maybe they could help her start over. Kelly soon found a small job cleaning offices. It wasn't glamorous and it didn't pay much, but it was honest work, and it gave her a sense of purpose. She woke up early every morning, worked hard, and returned to Dina's home each night, scribbling sketches and ideas in her notebook by the dim lamp. She promised herself she would rebuild her life, piece by piece, with no pity and no help from home. Every floor she cleaned, every paper she polished, became a small step toward her future. With every passing day, Kelly's anger at the injustice she had suffered turned into determination. Mrs. Dina's words echoed constantly. The truth needed time to grow teeth. And Kelly knew, deep inside, that one day, when the time was right, the world would see her strength, her talent, and the life she had built on her own. The road was long, wet, and lonely, but for the first time, Kelly felt ready to walk it. Months had passed since Kelly had left home. She had settled into a quiet routine, working at a small cleaning job in an architecture firm. She swept floors, dusted desks, and emptied trash bins, all the while keeping her head down. The work was simple, but it gave her a rhythm and space to think. One afternoon, while pushing a mop past the office's main hall, she overheard two architects talking excitedly about a design competition. It was open to anyone, they said, and no degree was required. The prize was huge. Enough money to change someone's life completely. Kelly's heart skipped a beat. She had always loved drawing and designing houses. Even as a child, she had sketched imaginary homes and layouts in secret, dreaming of building something beautiful. That night, she sat on the small couch in Mrs. Dina's home, staring at a blank sheet of paper. Her fingers itched to draw. The idea of the competition lit something inside her she hadn't felt in months. Hope mixed with fire. She decided she would enter. Wouldn't let her past define her, and she wouldn't wait for anyone's approval. If she could win this, she could start over in a way that no one could take from her. Over the next weeks, Kelly transformed her small corner into a private studio. After finishing her cleaning shifts, she would stay late, poring over blueprints, studying architectural magazines, and learning techniques she had only ever dreamed of using. She sketched designs on old sheets, sometimes on scraps she found, working in silence while the office emptied around her. She experimented with eco-friendly homes, small spaces, and clever designs that could help people live comfortably even with little money. Every night, the small lamp beside her flickered as she drew and redrew her ideas, refining them until they felt perfect. When the time came to submit her entry, Kelly made one choice that was just as important as the designs themselves. She used a pseudonym. She signed her work "The Girl Who Left." It felt right. She had left her family, left her old life, and now she was claiming something entirely for herself. For the first time, her designs weren't just drawings on paper. They were her voice, her story, and her rebellion against the injustice she had suffered. The spark that had started as a small hope in a rainy night now burned brightly, fueling every line, every angle, and every careful detail. Kelly knew this was more than a competition. It was her first step toward taking back her life and proving that leaving didn't mean giving up. It meant preparing for a comeback no one would see coming. Days before the competition results were announced, Kelly's phone buzzed with a message she didn't expect. It was from Nerra, her sister, the one who had accused her of stealing their mother's necklace. The message was short, almost polite. "Dad says he forgives you. Come home." For a moment, Kelly's chest tightened. Could it really be true? Could her father finally see that she had been innocent all along? But then, her eyes fell on an attachment beneath the message, a screenshot. It seemed Nerra had sent it by mistake. In the screenshot, Nerra was laughing with a friend, the kind of laugh that held no warmth, no remorse. The caption below made Kelly's stomach turn. "She really thinks I'll let her name clear before mine shines." Kelly stared at the screen, her fingers tightening around the phone. The words were like ice, freezing all hope of reconciliation. This wasn't about forgiveness at all. This was about control, about Nerra trying to steal the spotlight, to manipulate the story so everyone would remember her and not Kelly. All the months of struggle, the nights of sketching and learning in silence, suddenly made sense. This wasn't just family drama. This was a battle for truth, and Nerra had been playing games while Kelly suffered. Her heart hardened, but it also strengthened. She realized she didn't need anyone's approval, especially not Nerra's or her father's. The forgiveness they claimed to offer was meaningless, because it came from someone who had never cared enough to see the truth before. Kelly had worked too hard to let their false gestures distract her or slow her down. She could feel the fire inside her grow. Instead of replying, she locked her phone and looked at her sketches spread across the table. Every line she had drawn, every design she had perfected, every idea she had nurtured in secret, all of it was hers. No one could touch it, and no one could take credit. She whispered to herself, "This isn't about them anymore. This is about me. And I will shine, whether they see it or not." The accidental screenshot became more than a message. It became a confirmation. Kelly didn't just want to win the competition. She wanted to win life on her own terms. Nerra's jealousy and lies would no longer distract or hurt her. The truth, Kelly realized, was a power that couldn't be hidden forever. And as she prepared for the results, she knew she was ready. Not for their praise, but for the moment when the world would finally see who she really was. Weeks later, the day of the competition results finally arrived. Kelly sat quietly in the small room behind the stage, her hands folded over her sketchbook, heart pounding. She had worked so hard, sacrificed so many nights, and poured everything she had into her designs. She didn't care about fame or applause. She only wanted her work to speak for her. When the announcer called her pseudonym, The Girl Who Left, Kelly felt a rush of disbelief and triumph all at once. She had done it. She had won. Her design wasn't just a pretty plan, it was revolutionary. She had created eco-homes using recycled clay bricks, homes that could be built quickly, cheaply, and sustainably. They were perfect for families in rural areas who had never had access to safe or affordable housing. Every line, every measurement, every tiny detail in her design had been carefully considered. Journalists and reporters flocked around the winning designs, praising the innovation and vision behind The Girl Who Left. Kelly's heart swelled with pride, but she didn't step forward yet. She wanted to absorb the moment, to feel it sink in. Backstage, she leaned against the wall and watched the crowd celebrate the winner. People clapped and cheered for the idea, not knowing the person behind it was someone who had been told she didn't belong anywhere. Kelly thought about all the months she had spent living in a small room, working cleaning jobs, and drawing by the dim light of a lamp. Every hardship, every lonely night, every drop of rain she had endured outside her father's house had led her here. She smiled quietly to herself. For the first time, she had something truly hers. Her name attached to her own talent, even if it was still hidden behind a pseudonym. She had built something that mattered, not for recognition, not for revenge, but for the people who would benefit from her vision. This was her power. As the applause echoed through the hall, Kelly promised herself she wouldn't stop here. She would continue to create, to build, and to prove that leaving home didn't mean losing everything. The award was not just a trophy, it was a statement. She had turned betrayal into strength, silence into achievement, and pain into purpose. In that moment, standing quietly backstage, Kelly understood that she had finally begun to write her own story, one that no one could rewrite or steal from her. Kelly stepped out of the sleek black car and straight onto the polished floor of her childhood home. The air felt different now, not heavy with accusations or anger, but tense waiting. Her mother's 60th birthday was the perfect excuse to return, and the house was filled with relatives, friends, and neighbors, all chatting and laughing. But the moment Kelly walked through the door, the chatter stopped. Silence fell like a thick blanket. Every eye turned to her, taking in the sharp lines of her crisp suit, the calm smile on her face, and the quiet confidence in the way she moved. Her father, Packy, froze mid-step. His eyes widened, and for a moment Kelly saw the shock there. The shock of seeing a daughter he had cast out, standing taller and stronger than ever. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Kelly's gaze drifted past him and landed on Nerra, who was standing near the cake, smirking and whispering to someone beside her. Still pretending to be innocent? The words barely left her lips before Kelly's steady voice cut through, calm and measured. Not pretending. Just waiting. Without another word, Kelly reached into her handbag and pulled out a neatly sealed envelope. She walked over to her father and placed it on the table in front of him. The weight of it more than paper and cardboard. It carried months of truth, hard work, and justice. She didn't shout, she didn't plead, she didn't demand attention. She simply handed it over and sat down gracefully, letting the tension do its work. The room remained silent, the kind of silence that made hearts pound and mouths dry. Kelly's mother looked at her, her eyes flicking nervously between her two daughters. Packy's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the envelope, glancing at Kelly with a mix of confusion and fear. He had always seen her as the quiet, obedient daughter who would bow when told. Now she was calm, composed, and entirely in control, the opposite of what he expected. Nerra's smirk faltered as she noticed the change in the room, the way all eyes were subtly turning toward Kelly. The whispers she relied on for influence no longer had power. Kelly didn't need to yell or explain. Her presence, her confidence, and the envelope she had handed over spoke louder than any words ever could. She leaned back in her chair, eyes calm, heart steady, knowing that the next moments would finally reveal the truth she had waited so long to show, and that the house that had once pushed her out would now witness the strength and justice she had built for herself. Kelly watched quietly as her father, Packy, slowly opened the envelope. Inside were neatly stacked photos, each one carefully labeled. She had spent weeks gathering them, tracing every lie Nerra had told. And finally, the evidence was undeniable. The first photo showed the pawnshop where the original heirloom necklace had been sold years ago. Another showed the receipt with the date and the name Nerra had used. The final set compared the necklace to Kelly's sketches she had shared online for her design project. The pawnshop owner had recognized it instantly and reached out to Kelly when he saw her drawings. Packy's hands trembled as he flipped through the photos. His face turned pale, and Kelly could see the shock settling in. Every lie Nerra had told, every accusation, every tearful act of false innocence, began to crumble in front of him. Their mother gasped, covering her mouth with both hands, unable to look away. The necklace she had assumed her youngest daughter had destroyed was not only intact, but the truth about its disappearance was finally visible. Nerra's confident smirk faltered. She opened her mouth to speak, to twist the story somehow, but the words caught in her throat. Kelly could see the panic in her sister's eyes, the realization that the web of lies she had spun for years was unraveling in front of the entire family. Every fake tear, every accusation, every attempt to manipulate their father's trust no longer had power. Kelly remained calm, her eyes steady, as the truth unfolded. The photos didn't need explanation. They spoke louder than words, louder than Nerra's desperate protests, louder than years of deceit. For the first time, the family could see the reality of what had really happened. The necklace hadn't been stolen or broken by Kelly. Nerra's betrayal was clear for everyone to witness. The room was heavy with silence, thick and almost suffocating. Kelly felt a quiet satisfaction, not out of cruelty, but from finally seeing the truth take its rightful place. The evidence had done what she could not while living in their house. It had made the lies impossible to ignore. Nerra could cry, could beg, could plead, but the mask she had worn for years had shattered. Kelly's dignity, the truth she had carried alone for so long, finally spoke for her, leaving the family to confront the consequences of their own blindness and deceit. Packy's hands shook as he held the last photo, his eyes wide and unfocused. The memory of that night came rushing back, the words he had spoken so sharply, so coldly. Apologize or leave. He had believed he was being just, that he was teaching his daughter a lesson. But now, seeing the truth laid bare, he understood the gravity of his mistake. Pride had blinded him. He had chosen authority over trust, suspicion over love, and the weight of that choice pressed heavily on his chest. His mind replayed the moment Kelly had packed her bag, her trembling hands, her quiet resolve, and the long nights she had suffered outside their home. Kelly stood slowly, the room watching as she moved with calm purpose. Her voice was steady, controlled, yet every word carried the weight of the months she had endured. I left when I didn't deserve to, she said, meeting her father's eyes. But now, I'm not back for your approval. Her gaze shifted briefly to Nerra, then to her mother, and finally returned to Packy. I came to return what was stolen, not the necklace, but my dignity. She reached into the envelope and carefully removed the restored heirloom, placing it gently on the table. It gleamed under the room's light, a symbol not just of the lost jewelry, but of the innocence, respect, and trust that had been taken from her. Every movement was deliberate, measured, as if she were reclaiming not just the necklace, but every moment of unfairness, every tear, every whispered lie she had suffered. The silence in the room was almost unbearable, thick with tension and the weight of truth. Packy's lips parted, but no words came. He wanted to apologize, to explain, to undo the past, but he knew there were no words strong enough to take back what he had done. He had failed to see his daughter's truth when it mattered most, and the regret settled in his chest like a stone. Nerra shrank back, realizing the finality in Kelly's voice, the power in her quiet composure. Without another word, Kelly turned and walked toward the door. Her steps were calm, steady, unshaken. She didn't need their forgiveness, their praise, or their understanding. She had reclaimed what was hers. The necklace sat on the table, a silent witness to the lies that had been exposed, to the pride that had been broken, and to the dignity that had finally been restored. Kelly didn't look back. She had already won. Not through anger or revenge, but through strength, truth, and the quiet power of refusing to let anyone take her worth away. Nerra couldn't believe what was happening. Just hours after the truth about the necklace spread through their community, everything she had built on lies began to crumble. Her so-called friends stopped answering her calls and messages, realizing they had been supporting someone who had lied to them all along. Her boyfriend confronted her, anger and disappointment burning in his eyes, and walked away without another word. Even at work, colleagues whispered behind her back, and her manager gave her a cold stare that made it clear her position was now fragile. Nerra had spent years manipulating people, pretending to be innocent, and now the very people she depended on were turning their backs. For the first time, Nerra felt what Kelly had felt: isolation, betrayal, shame. She remembered the nights Kelly had spent away from home, rejected and alone, and suddenly she understood the weight of those silent hours. But this understanding didn't come with forgiveness. Instead, it came as a heavy realization that her actions had consequences she could no longer escape. Every smile she had faked, every tear she had cried to gain sympathy, now reflected back at her as the truth she could no longer hide. Desperate, Nerra tried calling Kelly over and over. She left messages, pleaded for a chance to explain, to apologize, to make things right. But Kelly didn't answer. Every phone call was ignored. Kelly had learned that forgiveness wasn't automatic, that just because someone asked for it didn't mean it was owed. Some lessons, some wounds, needed to remain as reminders that betrayal leaves scars and that trust, once broken, takes time, or sometimes never, to repair. Nerra's world, built on lies and manipulation, had collapsed completely. She sat alone in her room, staring at her phone, realizing that no amount of crying or begging could fix what she had done. The people who mattered, her family, her friends, the community, had seen through her lies, and the comfort she had relied on for years was gone. She understood now the pain Kelly had endured, the nights spent in fear and doubt, and the strength it took to survive without support. For Nerra, life had changed forever. She had lost more than just the necklace. She had lost her reputation, her relationships, and the illusion of control she had clung to for so long. And while she could try to rebuild, one thing was clear: some scars stayed, and some lessons were meant to be remembered, not forgiven. Kelly had moved on, stronger and wiser, leaving Nerra to face the reality she had created for herself. That a year had passed since Kelly had returned home and revealed the truth. The wounds had healed, the lies had been exposed, and she had spent every day building something meaningful from her pain. Today was the grand opening of her new design firm, House of Dawn, a name that carried her story. The story of leaving the darkness behind and stepping into her own light. The crowd gathered in the modern, sunlit hall, buzzing with excitement, but Kelly felt a quiet calm settle over her. It was the same calm she had felt the night she left her home, but now it was stronger, charged with power and purpose. As she stepped onto the stage, the room seemed to fall silent. Cameras clicked, lights reflected off the glass walls, and hundreds of faces turned toward her. Kelly's eyes swept across the crowd, seeing people who had supported her, inspired her, and believed in her talent. Then, almost at the edge of her vision, she noticed her father standing at the back. Packy's face was pale, his shoulders slightly hunched, and his eyes glistened with unshed tears. He had come, not for praise or applause, but to witness the woman his harsh words had tried to crush. Now standing taller and stronger than ever, Kelly took a deep breath, her voice steady and clear as it reached every corner of the room. "Once I was told to apologize for the truth," she said, letting the words linger. "Now I build homes for people who never had one." Every word carried her journey, her struggles, her nights of uncertainty, and her triumph. She didn't raise her voice in anger. She didn't need to. The power of her actions spoke louder than any revenge could. She didn't smile or wave at her father. She didn't seek approval or acknowledgement. She simply walked forward, confident and unshakable, letting her work and her presence prove the justice she had earned. The home she would build, the lives she would touch, and the company she had created were the true markers of her victory. She had not destroyed anyone. She had risen beyond them, showing that the most powerful revenge is not vengeance. It is living a life so full, so meaningful, and so beyond their reach that they can never touch it. As Kelly looked out at the applauding crowd, she felt no bitterness, only fulfillment. The past had shaped her, the lies had tested her, but her strength, her vision, and her integrity had carried her through. House of Dawn wasn't just a firm. It was a testament to resilience, dignity, and the truth that rising above is the most profound justice of all.